While I've always loved the compelling heroes and villains in shows, there's another specific character type that always intrigued me: morally gray characters. Those who make questionable choices and take actions that can easily be criticized, yet still feel understandable. They blur the line between right and wrong, forcing you to see their perspective even when you don't fully agree with what they've done. A prime example of this is Princess Bubblegum. Yet there will still be people who despise her, but that's another issue which I'll touch on later. Now, when it comes to a show like Gravity Falls, there aren't many characters that fall into that role. So what exactly am I talking about? Well, you see, morally gray characters are often considered controversial. They invite interpretation and discussion. Yet, there is one character in Gravity Falls that for some odd reason sparks more toxic and negative discourse than any other. A character that is honestly not really morally complex at all. A character that seems extremely sweet and harmless. Yet there are those in the fandom who truly believe she is a loathsome and horrible person. This is the most controversial Gravity Falls character, Mabel Pines. Yeah, full disclosure, I really did not understand why so many people wanted me to talk about her. Her story isn't exactly deep or thought-provoking enough to warrant my usual in-depth character analysis. While there are some genuine things to take away from her, I remember a lot of fans genuinely hating her. And that's what I want to figure out today. To be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of her when I first watched the show, but I was also 8. I couldn't exactly relate to a lot of her hobbies and interests. I didn't hate her or anything, I just didn't connect with her character. But now that I'm older, I want to take a more objective look at her. So let's go back through her appearances, break down her character, and look at her actions throughout the show to figure out what actually makes her so controversial. Starting off with season 1, we need to establish one of Mabel's core traits. From her very first appearance, she's shown chasing after pretty much every boy she sees in hopes of finding a summer romance. Now there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but my question is, why is it every guy? And more importantly, why do most of them suck, aside from maybe one? The first guy she tries to date even turns out to be what looks like a creepy zombie, only for it to actually be a bunch of gnomes. Right off the bat, we can see Mabel's a bit desperate. It's definitely a character flaw, but at this point, it's nowhere near enough to justify the level of hate she gets. Anyway, quick thing to keep in mind, in that same first episode, Mabel picks up a grappling hook from the Mystery Shack gift shop. This is going to be important later. The next episode to discuss is The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. This is Gideon Gleeful's first appearance. He falls for Mabel pretty hard, and she has a lot of difficulty telling him the truth that she's just not interested. Now, as someone who has dealt with a lot of people pleasers in my life, I get it. For one, everyone in the town loves the kid, and on one occasion, he asks her out on a second date in front of everyone, putting her under a ton of pressure. On top of that, he continuously love bombs her, which just makes things worse. Eventually, seeing how overwhelmed she is, Dipper Pines offers to break things off for her, which obviously backfires since Gideon immediately targets him thinking he got in the way. While this shit is going down, Mabel asks Wendy for advice, as despite her and Gideon now being broken up, she still feels bad. Wendy says nothing useful and instead starts naming various boyfriends she's broken up with.
Danny Feldman, Mark Epstein. Oh man, I'm not sure I ever actually broke up with him.
Wait, what?
Epstein? Anyway, Mabel realizes by herself that getting someone else to do the breaking up for her is extremely fucked up, and Gideon deserves a proper one. So she arrives just in the nick of time to break up with Gideon for real, offering that they can still remain friends. And it all seems like a classic wholesome Disney Channel ending to the episode. But then she subverts all that by doing this.
No, not really! You were like attacking my brother! What the heck?
Small thing, but I love that the show does not ignore the fact that Mabel clearly saw through the window that Gideon was about to kill Dipper not 30 seconds earlier. Dipper and Gideon fight before eventually falling off a cliff, but just as they're about to hit the ground, Mabel catches them by using the amulet, hence the name of the episode. They destroy the amulet and Gideon leaves, claiming that he'll return. Gideon's behavior here is completely unhinged. He escalates fast and clearly tries to manipulate Mabel by putting her in situations where she feels pressure to say yes. But by the end, Mabel takes that control back, both emotionally and literally. It's a strong finish for the episode. So far, Mabel hasn't really done anything bad, right? Well, let's keep going. Oh, real quick, let me know your favorite Gravity Falls character by leaving a comment down below. And while you're there, leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here. According to my analytics, 80% of you are not subscribed. I make character analysis videos just like this almost every week, and there's plenty more content planned. Plus, Finn Part 2 character analysis is coming out later this month, and maybe a video on the new regular show series. Subscribe so you don't miss out. In Dipper vs. Manliness, we're introduced to another major part of Mabel's character. She loves getting involved in other people's lives. Now, I know that sounds negative, but in this episode, it's not all that intrusive. She notices that Grunkle Stan might be interested in Lazy Susan, the waitress at the diner, and decides to fix him. Cue a classic cute montage. She tries changing everything about Stan, but of course, none of it works. By the end, she realizes what actually needs to be done. At first, I thought that the message was gonna be about accepting yourself and not changing for anyone, but instead, we get,
If you like fixing stuff, nothing could use more fixing than my Grunkle Stan. Also, women live longer than men, so your dating pool is smaller and you should really lower your standards.
yeah, that a bit harsh, but the core idea is still kind of there, just delivered in a weird way. Either way, this is our first real glimpse of Mabel's tendency to insert herself into other people's romantic lives, a trait that comes up again later. In Double Dipper, Mabel Pines meets Candy and Grenda for the first time, who go on to become her closest friends for the rest of the show. She also meets Pacifica Northwest, the stereotypical rich valley girl, and this episode sets up their rivalry moving forward. It also highlights one of Mabel's most likable traits. She's completely unapologetic about who she is. She's energetic, optimistic, and always looking on the bright side, and that attitude naturally lifts the people around her. Even though she loses the competition, thanks to Pacifica bribing someone to rig the results, she still walks away with something better. Two genuine friends, and that's largely because of how she carries herself and her willingness to stand up for herself. We see this dynamic continue in Irrational Treasure, where Pacifica mocks Mabel for being too silly. It gets to her, and she briefly tries to act more serious like Dipper, but in the end, it's actually her silliness that helps uncover the truth about the town's founder, Quentin Tremblay, exposing Pacifica's family as frauds. By the end, she states she's okay with being silly sometimes and doesn't care about exposing Pacifica. Oh, that's so sweet. Dipper, however, goes and lets Pacifica know her family are total frauds.
Man, revenge is underrated. That felt awesome.
I love how the show subverts that usual moral again. While some might find Mabel's silliness annoying, it is by no means actually problematic, at least in this episode. Again, a big thing to admire about her is how she really doesn't care about what others think. She's gonna be who she is, even if others may find it unappealing or annoying. After all, there isn't anything truly wrong with who you are, provided you don't have a toxic trait that affects your life or other people's lives for the worse. And we'll see if that ever happens with Mabel as we continue along. Now we arrive at probably the most important episode for her character, the Time Traveler's Pig. Dipper spends a day at the fair with Wendy while Mabel wins a pig that she names Waddles. The issue comes when Dipper accidentally injures Wendy's eye at one of the minigames, causing Robbie to come for her. And just like that, Dipper spirals. The guy has a massive crush on Wendy, so naturally he wants to go back and make sure he wins her a prize at that minigame. They then encounter Blendon Blandon, who works for the Time Anomaly Removal crew. Dipper steals his time machine to go back and fix his mistake at the fair. Mabel tags along because she wants to win Waddles again, a decision that proves to be far more important than you could ever imagine. The funny part is, Dipper fails yet again, and somehow by all odds, Wendy always gets hurt. Every single time. The boy tries to redo it countlessly, but it seems like this is a fixed point in time. Basically a canon event. That is, until Dipper calculates some insane plan that requires Mabel's help. And this time, it works. Dipper wins Wendy the prize, and everyone lived happily ever after, right? Well, you see, in this timeline, because Mabel was busy helping Dipper, Pacifica ended up getting Waddles, causing her to go into a frenzy. So the two fight about going back, causing a bunch of time paradoxes until eventually they arrive back at the fair. Dipper then says to her,
You really want Wendy to date Robbie?
I don't know.
and we get an interesting scene that I'm sure many had a problem with. Mabel sulks, completely depressed that she lost her pig. Dipper claims that come tomorrow, she'll forget all about it. To prove it, he travels to the future one day, and she's in the same spot, still sulking. He travels forward even more, and yet again, she's still in that same spot, emotionally withering away. Realizing how much Waddles means to her, Dipper makes the tough choice and changes the timeline. He throws the ball, Wendy gets hurt, causing Robbie to cheer her up, and finally, Mabel gets Waddles back. She dives onto Dipper with elation, thanking him. While I absolutely love this episode, I know for a fact that Mabel haters call attention to it to illustrate how selfish she is. Now, I'll be real, when I was a kid, I also thought Mabel was overreacting big time. It's just a pig, get over it. But now that I'm a lot older, I look at things a lot differently. Dipper is 12, Wendy is 15. He, at this point in time, does not have a chance with her. Does he think that by winning her this toy, he'll just get her? Deep down, he knows that won't make a difference. And yes, you might say he's doing it to stop Robbie from dating her, since he's a total asshole, and while that may be true, it's still born out of jealousy. What I'm getting at is, yeah, it sucks that Dipper ends up getting Wendy hurt, even if it's unintentional, but it's really not comparable to how much Waddles means to Mabel. We clearly see she forms a strong attachment to that pig. Now sure, you can argue she overreacts, just standing there for ages after losing him, and I'd agree with that, but she's also a kid, so who really cares? My verdict? Mabel acts a bit selfishly in this episode, but so does Dipper, and because of that, it feels less like a major character flaw and more like a realistic portrayal of kids making imperfect choices. Let me know what you guys think about this down below. In Summerween, we once again see the twins butt heads, and surprisingly, Wendy's kind of involved here too. Dipper doesn't want to go trick-or-treating because he's worried that Wendy and her friends will see him as childish, but when the Summerween trickster shows up, the group has to collect 500 pieces of candy or risk getting eaten. The real conflict starts when Mabel finds out that Dipper was planning to ditch her and go to Wendy's party instead, on their favorite holiday. That obviously upsets her, and she drops a pretty important line.
It's exactly why we need to go trick-or-treating, Dipper. We're getting older. There's not that many Halloweens left. I guess I didn't realize it was already our last one.
It's a simple line, but it ties directly into one of her biggest character conflicts. Now, I'm not going to go after Dipper for wanting to hang out with Wendy instead of Mabel sometimes. Instead, I'm just going to call her a bit of a hypocrite because she does the exact same thing, ditching Dipper for her friends. Along with that takeaway though, the main point I want to illustrate here is Mabel's crippling fear of growing up. We now arrive at the deep end. Mabel, after spotting a new guy at the local pool, instantly becomes infatuated with him in classic Mabel fashion. It's not just that she finds him attractive though, it's also the fact that he apparently never leaves the pool, which immediately sparks her curiosity. Of course, the twist is that he's actually a merman named Mermando, who ended up in the pool by accident, and despite liking him, Mabel does everything she can to help him escape and return home. This is actually pretty important for her character, because later on, she's put in a very similar situation and ends up making the exact opposite choice for a brief time. Also, gotta love this scene.
Blackmail.
She also does end up getting her first kiss with him before saying goodbye. I think one of the main issues people have with this episode is that Dipper, yet again, sacrifices what he wants for Mabel. In classic Dipper fashion, he takes a job as an assistant lifeguard just to be around Wendy, who's working as the main lifeguard. His job is simple: make sure no one messes with the pool or steals anything, or his creepy boss fires him. But in order to help Mermando escape, Mabel ends up breaking in and stealing pool supplies, and by the end, Dipper chooses to help save Mermando, knowing full well it'll cost him his job. Now, I get the criticism that Dipper is always the one sacrificing, but in this case, he's literally helping save someone's life. Mermando would have been stuck there indefinitely otherwise, and who knows what would have happened if the government had found out he was a merman. So honestly, I don't think Mabel is being all that selfish here, and Dipper's quote-unquote sacrifice isn't even that big of a deal, especially since we later find out that Wendy got fired too. Now, moving on to Carpet Diem, this is what I meant when I said Mabel sometimes ditches Dipper to hang out with her friends. The main conflict comes from Dipper wanting his own space, since Mabel constantly has sleepovers in their shared room. When Seuss discovers Stanford Pine's hidden room, the two immediately start fighting over it. Thanks to a magic carpet, they accidentally switch bodies, and chaos falls as they're forced to live each other's lives.
Look, it all begins with this little fella, the pituitary gland. He may be little, but he has big plans.
Eventually, Dipper opens up and tells Mabel about how he actually feels, that her constantly bringing friends over makes him feel left out. And once she hears that, she stops fighting over the room and gives him the key. Yet again, she reflects on her actions and makes things right. The ending is genuinely wholesome, with Dipper choosing to come back to their shared room anyway. And like I mentioned earlier, Mabel's claim that Dipper is always ditching her for Wendy isn't entirely fair, because she does the exact same thing with her friends. On the surface, it might seem hypocritical, but the key difference is that once it's pointed out to her, she actually changes. That's not exactly hypocritical, like I said, it's growth. But in keeping with the idea of growth, let's talk about Boys Crazy. Mabel and her friends go to a boy band concert and find out that the boy band in question is actually made in a machine, so they break them out of captivity to hide them from their freak manager. At first, the shack becomes a temporary home for them, but soon, Mabel becomes obsessed and refuses to let them go. Now obviously, anyone can see that this is insanely unhinged.
Girls mature faster than guys.
She even turns on her friends when they tell her that what she's doing is wrong. Thankfully though, after the boy band sings a song to her about how them being truly free is a complete fantasy, she decides to let them go. I really like that Mabel comes to this conclusion herself instead of someone else trying to convince her. This again sort of mirrors what happened with Mermando. See, up until this point, her quest to find a boyfriend for the summer hasn't panned out so well. So upon having the opportunity to spend time with her dream of a boy band, of course she'd jump on it. This isn't excusing her unhinged behavior, by the way, this is just a progression of her arc. A lot of people bring up this episode to shit on Mabel, but again, she realizes her mistake and rectifies it. Let's now talk about Land Before Swine. Your Uncle Stan puts Waddles out of the shack briefly, and the pig gets snatched up by a pterodactyl. Mabel specifically told Stan not to leave him out while she was away, but he didn't listen, resulting in her giving him the silent treatment. Thankfully, the group does find Waddles deep underground, but thanks to the dinosaur, Waddles and Stan get separated from the others. Upon seeing how cute the pig is and realizing how much he cares for Mabel, he takes on the pterodactyl while protecting the pig. Now the reason I bring this up is because of a parallel that we'll get to in season 2. Overall, it's a cute episode that develops her relationship with Stan. Let's get to the season 1 finale, Gideon Rises. Gideon manages to steal the deed to the mystery shack, leaving our main characters homeless. While trying to help, one of the main things Mabel keeps mentioning is how, despite them having lost everything, she still has the grappling hook.
Pretty cute.
Eventually, Gideon then manages to get Dipper's journal, which pretty much spells game over. Stan, now broke, is forced to send Dipper and Mabel back home. That's when a huge Gideon robot apprehends them. See, Gideon believes Dipper has Journal 1, but after realizing he doesn't have it, he throws it away and kidnaps Mabel, claiming he's gonna rule this town with her as his queen. Dipper then musters up all his courage and dives into the robot's head, having a satisfying beatdown on him, but in the chaos, they're all knocked off the bridge. The robot crash lands, causing a huge explosion, and you have to wonder, what kind of ex machina plot device are they gonna use to make sure that our main characters And that's why this is still one of the best cartoons of all time. This was set up right from the very first episode. I like that Mabel isn't the classic damsel in distress character in the end, and it took both her and Dipper to save themselves. And yet, Mabel haters really don't ever bring up that she did this because reasons. With that, let's move on to season 2, because this is where most of the criticism around Mabel really starts to pick up. In Into the Bunker, Mabel realizes that Dipper still has feelings for Wendy, and takes it upon herself to force him to confess. This is that same tendency we saw earlier, her need to involve herself in other people's romantic lives, but this time it's taken way too far. When they enter the author's secret bunker, Mabel literally traps Dipper and Wendy in a room, so he has no choice but to tell her how he feels. The problem? That room is actually an entrance to a cave, where the shape-shifting monster, reminiscent of the Thing, is hiding. Dipper's banging on the door, telling her that there's a monster, and she just doesn't believe him. Despite Wendy asking Dipper to just tell her the secret so Mabel will let them in, he refuses and tries to find another way out. Now, you could say Dipper is being stubborn here, but let's be real, he wouldn't even be in that situation if it wasn't for Mabel. This is the first time I really can't defend her. Her need to insert herself into other people's lives almost gets her brother and Wendy killed. To her credit, she does apologize afterward. Not for doing what she did, but
I'm sorry for being so pushy, Dipper.
this is easily one of her worst moments. I'll briefly touch on the Golf War, since it helps develop Mabel and Pacifica's relationship. The two face off in a mini golf competition where Mabel discovers these sentient golf balls that can actually control the course. Mabel uses them to cheat against Pacifica because
Pacifica's rich, Mabel. She's cheating at life.
facts. Eventually, things escalate when the golf balls kidnap Pacifica to kill her. In the end, Mabel saves her and the two team up to fight them off. Despite what an asshole Pacifica has been to her, she still decides to give her a ride home and shares a taco with her. The beginnings of an unlikely friendship and showcasing more of the warm side of Mabel's personality. And now we arrive at Sock Opera, another widely discussed episode when it comes to Mabel. Dipper wants to find the password to the laptop they found in the author's bunker, and Mabel promises to help him. But just then, enter yet another guy Mabel becomes infatuated with, Gabe. Real quick, the guy's a freak who loves puppets. A bit too much. So she goes full throttle in trying to impress him by making her own puppet show, effectively ditching Dipper. He is then greeted by Bill, who tries to make a deal with him in exchange for the password. Obviously, Dipper refuses at first, but when Mabel ditches him again to work on her play for Gabe, Bill quickly latches onto Dipper's vulnerability.
Besides, what's your sister done for you lately? How many times have you sacrificed for her, huh? And when has she ever returned the favor?
I have to mention how many people bring up this scene to illustrate Mabel's selfishness, but come on, you have to look at what's happening here. The guy's a villain who's purposely twisting moments to trick Dipper. I've already dismissed the fallacies regarding each of these moments, so let's move along. Dipper gets tricked and Bill takes over his body. Later on, Dipper possesses a sock and tells Mabel that Bill is going after the journal. She eventually gets to it, but is quickly apprehended by Bipper.
You didn't seem to have a problem taking it for your own play, or ditching him when he needed you. Give me the book or your play is ruined.
It's funny though, hearing Bill's words is what makes Mabel realize how selfish she's being in this episode.
I mean, who would sacrifice everything they've worked for just for their dumb sibling?
Dipper would.
And she outsmarts and defeats Bill. In the end, she apologizes to her brother for obsessing over a guy again. A freak guy at that. Yet again, Mabel self-reflects and apologizes for her dumb mistakes. And in a way, she did finally sacrifice something for the greater good. But it was more of her dodging a bullet, to be honest. In Society of the Blind Eye, the group encounters a secret society that wipes the memories of people who've come into contact with the town's strange phenomena. In this episode, Mabel starts fixating on how all of her summer romances have failed, especially after Mermondo sends her a note saying he's getting married to stave off some underwater war. So when she comes across the memory gun, she decides to erase all those memories so she doesn't have to feel like shit about it anymore. Thankfully, she's interrupted by an alarm before she can go through with it. It's only after seeing Old Man McGucket's traumatic memories and how he's come to accept them that she realizes what she was just about to do. It would just set her up to make the same mistakes all over again. At the end of the day, even the bad memories are part of who you are, and that's by no means a bad thing. Overall, solid growth from her. The Love God, however, really highlights the consequences of Mabel meddling in other people's romantic lives. Since Robbie is depressed over his and Wendy's breakup, she takes it upon herself to find him a new girlfriend, fully convinced she's the perfect matchmaker. I genuinely don't know where she got this idea from. She even claims she set up Seuss and Melody, which, no, she didn't. That was just Seuss being in the right place at the right time. And need I say more about this couple? She also failed with Stan and Susan, given that Susan was a bit needy and not right for him. So Mabel's delusion gets the better of her and she tries to find someone for Robbie, but she fails. That's when she meets the Love God, the actual true matchmaker. But it turns out he uses uses this magic love dust to set people up. Mabel ends up stealing some and uses it on Robbie and Tambry, one of Wendy's friends. Thinking she's done the right thing, she proudly tells everyone the good news, and immediately everything falls apart. Wendy's mad because her friend is now dating her ex, and to make things worse, another friend had a crush on Tambry that no one even knew about. It's just a complete mess. Dipper explicitly told Mabel not to interfere with Robbie's life, and she does the exact opposite. Why? Because she wants everyone to be happy. And sure, that's a noble goal, but it's also incredibly immature and comes from this need to play God in other people's lives. By the end, Mabel gets a cure from the love god and is about to fix everything, but then she pauses and reflects. She realizes that every time she's meddled like this, it's only made things worse. So instead of forcing a solution, she chooses not to interfere this time, especially after seeing how genuinely happy Robbie is with Tambry. And in the end, that turns out to be the right call, since the group eventually works things out on their own. Now, while she does learn a valuable lesson here, she doesn't exactly drop this matchmaking habit, as we see later in Roadside Attraction. So yeah, I can't really defend her in this episode. She's pretty annoying here. Not what he seems. Arguably the most important episode in the entire show. When Grunkle Stan is taken into custody by the government, Dipper and Mabel discover that he's been living a double life, and that there's a portal hidden beneath the shack, causing these brief but dangerous anomalies. Along with Seuss, they try to shut it down, but Stan shows up just in time, telling them not to shut it down and insisting that they trust him. Not exactly the best timing, considering they just uncovered all his secrets moments earlier. As the anomalies grow more intense, things escalate into a full-on struggle, leaving Mabel as the only one in a position to shut the portal down. And just as she's about to do it, she pauses and looks at Stan.
Everything I've worked for, everything I care about, it's all for this family!
And as the timer is about to hit 0,
I trust you.
an extremely important decision, and one that turns out to be the right one. Because who shows up?
The author of the journals, my brother.
Technically, Mabel is one of the reasons Stanford Pines makes it back, even if it was one of the riskiest calls she could have made. And honestly, it feels completely in character for her, while also paying off what Stanley did for her earlier. He saved Waddles for her, and now she's the one who ends up saving his brother. And even after seeing all of Stan's secrets, she still chooses to trust that his intentions are for the sake of the family, something, as we've seen, Mabel values above everything else. The last Mabel corn is a fun one. Thorn needs a piece of unicorn hair to cast a rune that'll protect the shack from Bill, and Mabel immediately volunteers because of course she's a 12-year-old girl obsessed with unicorns. But as they often say, never meet your heroes. The unicorn claims she'll only give her hair to someone with a pure heart, and says Mabel isn't worthy. To be honest, this is one of those moments where the show kind of tries to paint Mabel as this super pure, kind-hearted character, who rarely does wrong, when we've already seen that's not entirely true. So to prove herself, Mabel goes around doing a bunch of good deeds, but it doesn't work, because she's only doing them for selfish reasons. Eventually, the others split off and try to just steal the hair, and Mabel steps in to stop them. That's when it's revealed that the unicorn was bullshitting her the entire time, leading Mabel to officially lose it. This was fun as hell to watch, seeing her put down that goody two-shoes act and just taking the unicorn hair by force.
It's perfect! You've protected your family. You're a good person, Mabel.
Thanks, Grunkle Ford. But today I learned that morality is relative.
Even though the unicorn is kind of an asshole, what she says about Mabel isn't entirely wrong. The show, with other characters' dialogues, often presents her as a super kind-hearted, almost flawless character. But in reality, she's just a kid who makes mistakes and has her own flaws. And I think that might be part of why she's so disliked. Sometimes the show leans a bit too hard into that, oh my goodness, she's so pure and cute angle, even when we've clearly seen otherwise. It's not a huge issue, just a bit of wonky writing, to be honest. And we have Dipper and Mabel versus the future, the main event of this entire video. The gist of it is this: Mabel plans their 13th birthday, coincidentally falling on their last day in Gravity Falls, but things don't go as planned. For one, Wendy tells her that high school is actually ass and not as amazing as the movies make it out to be. On top of that, her friends can't even make it to her party because they have other commitments. And while all of this is happening, Dipper goes off on an adventure with Ford, who offers him the chance to become his apprentice. Mabel's already struggling with the idea of growing up, but when she overhears Dipper agreeing to stay in Gravity Falls over the walkie-talkie, she completely breaks down, especially after Stanley tells her,
At least whatever happens after this summer, you'll still have your brother along with you through thick and thin. Not everyone can say that, you know?
The two argue, and Mabel's clearly hurt. She talks about how Dipper was the one person who thought she could always count on after the summer ends, and now she feels like he's leaving her behind too. Dipper tries to reassure her that he'll always visit and video call, but that's not enough. Mabel just wants things to stay the same. She wants summer to last forever. Dipper tells her that no one likes growing up, but it's inevitable.
Things change.
And hearing that, Mabel runs off into the woods with her backpack, except it turns out she accidentally grabbed Dipper's. And just then, she hears a voice. Blended Black Blandon approaches her, offering her exactly what she wants, a way to make summer last forever. All he asks for in return is the transdimensional rift. Now we know from Ford that this thing is incredibly dangerous. If Bill Cipher gets his hands on it, everything goes to hell. Mabel, however, doesn't know that. She finds the rift in Dipper's bag, hears Blandon say,
Unless you're ready to leave, gravity falls.
and in that moment, she hands it over. And just like that, Blandon reveals himself to be possessed by Bill, and Weirdmageddon begins. Now this one's interesting to unpack. I remember how many comments I got on my Bill Cipher video calling me a misogynist because I said Mabel was an idiot for handing over the rift. Like, seriously? I guess I hate women now because I called the character stupid for making a dumb decision.
Listen, if you see criticism aimed in the direction of a woman and immediately cry sexism, you are the sexist one.
And what's funny is that those same people completely ignore the fact that I say the exact same thing in that video about Bill Cipher. Look, if you never noticed it the first time, Stanley here has 6 fingers. For someone who is all powerful, Bill's a idiot. Now, while I still think Mabel's an idiot here, there's a deeper layer here. Bill, as we've established, is a master manipulator, and the minute he sees Mabel in such a vulnerable place, he knows the exact thing to say to her to get what he wants. On top of that, it is also Ford's fault for not telling Mabel and the other family members about it, because, well, it's extremely fucking important. Then again, look at it, Mabel, it clearly looks like something extremely valuable. That's neither here nor there, though. Let's go back to the root of Mabel's conflict. Yes, she comes across as immature and selfish here. If she truly loves Dipper, she should be able to let him stay, but she simply can't. And a big reason why is because of what she learned about Stanley and Stanford. The parallel the show draws is deliberate. Their bond fell apart so badly that after overhearing their argument, Mabel turns to Dipper and says,
Can you promise me you won't get stupid?
Not stupider than you, dum-dum.
she's scared. She's trying to prevent their relationship from ending up like her grunkles. But there's a bit of irony here. Mabel's kind of misreading the lesson. Stan didn't lose Ford because he let him go. He lost him because he couldn't. His selfish wants and needs are what drove them apart. And in trying to hold on to Dipper, Mabel repeats that exact same mistake. Stan clung too tightly and lost his brother. Mabel did the same, risking the loss of hers. So IMO, Mabel messes up pretty badly in this penultimate episode, and I don't really blame others for criticizing the way she acts here. But I will say that those saying she sucks because she caused the end of the world when a literal triangle demon, one of the deadliest villains of all time, managed to manipulate her, are actually the real idiots. Because if it isn't clear here already, let me tell you something. It's not that big of a secret, but it's really, really important. She's fucking 12. Overall, let me know what you guys think about this moment and whether you agree or disagree with my points. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Now let's get to the 3-part finale, Weirdmageddon. Bill traps Mabel in a pocket reality called Mabel Land, where, as the name suggests, she's basically God. While the real world is falling apart, Mabel's living in a place with no rules, where her biggest wish comes true, for summer to last forever. When the gang tries to take her back, she refuses and just tells them to stay here, while everyone in the real world suffers. This leads into a really heartfelt sequence about reality versus fantasy. Reality is harsh, it hurts, and it doesn't care what you want. Fantasy, on the other hand, never lets you down. It is here that we see some rough memories from both Mabel and Dipper. Her getting gum stuck in her hair, and him getting no Valentines at school. By the end of it, though, Dipper tells her he can't just magically give her everything she wants, but as her brother, he'll always do his best to be there for her. And we see how those memories actually ended, with both of them helping each other through those rough moments. Dipper also realizes he doesn't really want to take Ford's apprenticeship. He wants to have a normal childhood and face the unknown with his sister. And that's the line that finally snaps Mabel out of it. After escaping the bubble, she thanks him and even tells him that if he does want to stay in Gravity Falls, she won't stand in his way. But at that point, Dipper's already made his choice. Again, a lot of people point to how selfish Mabel acts in this episode, and yeah, that's fair. But does that really define her if she ultimately accepts reality by the end? And it's not like she just passively goes along with what Dipper says either. She actually tells him to follow his dreams, even if that means being apart. That's real growth, and it shows that the two of them aren't going to end up like their grunkles. In the finale, we see the twins distract Bill just long enough for Ford and Stanley to switch places and trick him. That leads to Stan losing his memories and Bill finally being defeated. It seems like this was the ultimate sacrifice, and Grunkle Stan is well and truly gone. However, thanks to Mabel's scrapbook, Stan is able to regain his memories, and with that, the twins head back home, off into the unknown together. I think people often confuse being annoying with being genuinely problematic. And to be honest, while I love some of Mabel's moments, I've never been the biggest fan of her, but that really just comes down to personal preference. Yeah, she can be annoying. Her boy crazy episodes were pretty frustrating to watch at times, but does that make her a terrible character? Not even close. Most of the time, she actually reflects on her mistakes and apologizes for them. There are a few moments where we don't really see that follow through, but overall, she does grow. And if she never reflected or owned up to her actions, then yeah, I'd agree that she's a bad character. But as we see, that's simply not the case. People say Mabel is never called out, but that's not really true. She is.
But what about Waddles? He was my soulmate.
You said that about a ball of yarn once!
The difference is that most of the time, the consequences are small or quickly resolved. The only time her mistake has major lasting consequences is when she hands the rift to Bill. I think it would have helped if she had told everyone what she did, and she breaks down trying to accept that. That's when Dipper and Stanley comfort her, saying that at least now, they can find a way to stop Bill once and for all, instead of finding band-aid solutions. I think a small scene like that would have really helped her image. We also have to acknowledge that she comes in clutch multiple times, whether it's outsmarting Bill, saving the two of them with her grappling hook, bringing Stan's memories back, or even letting go of the button for Ford's arrival. Some truly great and satisfying moments for her in the show. So that brings us to the real question. Why is Mabel really hated? Part of it is bias. Female characters, especially ones who are emotional or messy, tend to get scrutinized more harshly for their mistakes. Look at Princess Bubblegum. She's a morally great character who makes questionable decisions, even though she bears a lot of similarities to Batman. Now, to be fair, there are cases where criticism is justified, like Fiona from Fiona and Cake, who I think just suffers from weak writing. But Mabel isn't that for the most part. Her character is consistent and her flaws are intentional. After all, it's what makes a character interesting. At the end of the day, Mabel Pines isn't some deeply flawed or poorly written character. She's just a kid. I have to stress, a 12-year-old kid who makes mistakes, learns from them, and sometimes messes up along the way. You don't have to like her, but the level of hate she gets doesn't really match what she actually does in the show. And honestly, the fact that people can seem to agree on whether she's annoying, misunderstood, selfish, or overhated only proves one thing, that she really is the most controversial Gravity Falls character. What do you guys think? Let me know your points down below. I try to be as unbiased as I could, and I really hope people don't misconstrue my words. Who am I kidding? This is the fucking internet. If you're new around here, please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed. Sorry for this video taking so long. If you're in my Discord, you would have seen I got my wisdom tooth removed and I was done out for a week. Don't worry, Finn the Human Part 2 is up next, coming later this month, along with some other goodies I have planned. If you want to support me further, follow all my socials, join my Patreon, consider grabbing my book The Shattered Absolution, heavily inspired by the shows I cover, and I want to thank you once again for watching.